The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. This is the word of the Lord. That's not bad. That's not bad. We're starting a new sermon series today that we are calling Forgotten Fruit. Because there's some of these fruit of the Spirit that we talk about a lot in church, love, joy, and peace, but there's some that we tend to skip a little bit. And today, as it's already been mentioned, we're talking about one of the hardest ones, patience. And I was telling a group of people earlier, you know what happens when you spend a week prepping a sermon on patience, right? I've been tested over and over again this week, constant test of my patience. But I want you to think right now, what's an area of your life, maybe you're already thinking about it, where you feel impatient? Maybe it's like Lisa mentioned, maybe it's with a kid, maybe it's your job, maybe it's something you're waiting for right now. And as you think about that, I want to give you my top 3 list of places and situations that cause me the most impatience, okay? I'm sure you have your own list, but this is mine. So we're going to count down from number 3. Can I get a drum roll, please? Nice, okay. All right, number 3, waiting for a reply. Super hard. This could be any kind of reply. Maybe you send a text and you put yourself out there. Maybe you say an apology, or you reach out to a crush and you wait for those 3 little dots to appear and nothing but silence. And it's hard not to fill in a narrative, right? Like, they must hate me. Did I offend them? And so you check and you check. Maybe when you apply for college, you check your email every day, or you apply for a promotion or a job, and it's all you can think about. Waiting for a reply is so hard because it's out of our control, right? It's in someone else's hands. Okay, all right, number 2, don't need a drum roll this time, everybody. Number 2, lines. Any and all lines. You're at the grocery store, and for some reason, only one person is working that day, and you're picking up a few items, and then somebody in front of you pulls out, you know what they pull out, right? A checkbook, cash. And it's like, that's not allowed anymore, is it? It's not allowed. There's lines at Costco, lines for gas, lines at the DMV, which, by the way, is the only place on earth where God's presence is absent. Lines are primed for impatience. All right. Finally, number 1. Anybody want to guess? Number 1. Stoplights. That's around the, driving. Driving. This is so hard for me. It's the place where we have little to no control, and you're late for a meeting, and someone gets in front of you, and apparently they're driving a lawnmower because it's just crawling along, and you get to the stoplight, and it turns green, and the nerve of the person in front of you, because it takes them 3 seconds for them to go. Like, 3 seconds, how dare they? There's nothing to do in the car, so we get on our podcast and our music. And we know we're not supposed to look at our phone. We know how bad that is. But the next time you're at a stoplight, just look around at the cars around you. Everybody is looking at their phone. It's a miracle we make it to the places we need to go. Now, these are just 3 examples, but they perfectly highlight the reality that you and I know, that we live in an impatient world, and by all accounts, maybe the most impatient time in history. I actually this week found some stats and some graphs to highlight this, but I realized I don't need to show you them. You've seen them. You've seen the research. And better yet, you feel it in yourself, right? The itch, the nervous energy, the inability to sit still without a device. Some of you are on your device right now. I'm not going to call you out, but you are. Just kidding. The difficulty of waiting, the expectation of getting things instantly. And so when we talk about patience, we're talking about one of the most important issues in our world today. It's not just about bettering ourselves or wanting to be less addicted to dopamine or to be more zen. We're talking about our souls, our inner world. What is this impatient, instant gratifying, dopamine-driven world doing to our souls? how is it affecting our ability to connect with God or to connect with others? Because here's the scary part, and it's the true problem. Nothing about following Jesus is quick. Nothing about connecting with God is instant or immediate. God is invisible, often quiet. God is not Santa Claus or Amazon. Doesn't deliver our desires on demand. There's a book by John Mark Comer. It sort of took the Christian world by storm the past few years, and it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which was birthed from a quote of Dallas Willard, who once said, "Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life today. So you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life." And the first time I heard this, it seemed like an exaggeration. Like, really? Like, I can think of other bigger enemies. But the more I've reflected on it and observed our moment in time, I just think it's spot on. As our culture hurries more and we are influenced by urgency, we are being discipled by a culture in a rush. And if we're not extra careful, if we're not ruthless, we will lose our ability to connect with God. But today we want to talk about this truth that hope is not lost. There's a great opportunity in front of us to be discipled in an alternative way, to be the kind of people who are calm, relaxed, who aren't addicted to devices or entertainment, who live with openness, exude peace. So, today let's dig into the forgotten fruit of patience. I want to go back to one of the oldest stories in the Bible to get a sense of what we can learn about patience and our relationship with God. So Genesis 12 is where God creates a promise to Abraham, a promise to be a great nation, to restore God's kingdom of shalom. So we see this in Genesis 12. The Lord had said to Abram, "I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I'll make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses, I will curse you, and all people on the earth will be blessed through you." And then a couple of chapters later, God says, "Look up at the sky, count the stars, if you can count them." Then he said, "So shall your offspring be." So God is promising to make a great nation that will bless others through Abraham's kids. His kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids. But it's so important to note how crazy this was, because in chapter 12, verse 4, we read this: Abram was 75 years old. Now, there are a lot of sweet things about life in your 70s, but having kids is usually not one of them. It's insane. It's insane. So right away in this story, we see this is a story about trust. Trust that God is in control. He can do the impossible. But what happens next? Nothing. Nothing. God makes this audacious, crazy promise, and nothing happens. God apparently isn't Santa Claus or Amazon. The kids don't just appear in a delivery box. And so what do Abraham and Sarah do? They wait. They wait 11 years and still no kids. Like, this is a long time. And maybe some of you can relate to this today. You've been waiting a long time for maybe a potential spouse, or for your kid to follow Jesus, or next step in your career. When we read these biblical stories, sometimes we forget these are human stories. They are us. And 11 years, that's a long, painful time. So this is what happened. Sarah finally says to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave, and perhaps I can build a family through her." So after this long, painful time of waiting, they decide to take matters into their own hands. And again, we can all relate to this too, right? We get tired of waiting, so we take things into our own hands. And this is where we can make our first observation about patience. Here it is. Impatience is a form of control. Patience is a form of letting go. Impatience is a form of control, but patience is a form of letting go. Just think about it. What are the hardest places to have patience? Places in which we are out of control, in lines, in waiting rooms, in traffic, waiting for a reply from someone. In these moments, it's like our insides boil over and we just want to take back some of the control. Maybe if I check my email again and again to see if the reply came. I'm not proud to admit this, but I already said this. I've been tested a lot this week, and I was waiting for a reply from someone, and I happened to wake up at 3 a.m. with my thoughts just going crazy. And so I thought to myself, you're preaching on patience. Just let it go, bro. Let it go. And I didn't. I reached over to my phone, and I just checked, and it was like, no reply. Okay. I felt so out of control. I've talked about this before. I love playing Legos with my kids, and honestly, they're really good at building the kits, but I am even better. I'm a Lego Jedi master. So sometimes I'll be sitting there, I'll be watching them construct, and they're taking a while to figure it out, or they put a piece in wrong, and I notice in myself this great difficulty to sit still. Instead of letting them figure out, I want to reach out and say, well, let me show you this. Like, this is how it goes right here. I need to take control of the situation. This is impatience. But patience is birthed from trust. When we abide in Christ and we connect with Him, this fruit grows in us because we're able to trust exactly where and when God has us. And this can happen in little ways. We can trust it's okay if I'm a few minutes behind in traffic. Things will be okay. We can trust it will work out if I don't hear from someone in time. We can trust life will go on. God will keep the world spinning even if my package is a day late. But it's in bigger ways too. Like we can trust our relationships to Him. God cares more about them than I do, so I've done my part and I can let go. Our careers, we can let go of needing to find the perfect thing. We can trust God's view of our identity. Maybe for you this morning, this is something God wants to say to you. Whatever situation you're impatient with, maybe what is needed is for you to release control, to work on trusting God instead of yourself. Now, this leads to another observation about patience. Impatience is a restlessness for the future. Patience is a presence in the moment. Impatience, future, patience in the moment. Abraham and Sarah had been blessed by God, moved to a new land. They had God's presence. They had each other, but it wasn't enough. They had a longing for the future. I can remember being in 5th grade, surrounded by little kids and longing for junior high, where true teenagers were. But then in junior high, swimming in a pool of puberty, I was desperate for high school, to drive and to date. That's when life would begin. But in high school, anxious to leave the cliques and the pep rallies and get to college. And college, restless to get to the real world with a real job. Restless to get married and on and on. See, many of us, we have these goalposts. And these goalposts just keep moving and moving, right? We can't wait to get to one, but as soon as we do, we're eager to get to the next one. We're restless for the next thing. All the while missing the very moment God has us in. We miss the beauty of this present moment where God is with us. I had to go to urgent care recently. I don't know the last time you've been to urgent care in the Bay Area, but there are about 600 of us in the lobby. People were coughing. Knives were protruding out of legs. It's rough. I looked around. I thought to myself, I'm not sure I'm going to make it out of here alive. And I went to the counter, and the worker told me it would be 4 hours. 4 hours to wait. And normally, I would be incessantly thinking, like, when are they going to call my name? I'd be checking the counter constantly, trying to get to the next thing. But thankfully, I just had this moment of awareness while I was sitting in the chair. Since seminary, I rarely read books that aren't theology books, and I always complain about not having time. So in that moment, I was able to pull out a fiction book and just bask in the beauty of having 4 hours to just sit and relax and read. And admittedly, it wasn't the same as reading on a beach, but it felt like such a gift. It was just a rare time when I simply lived in the moment, not restless for the next thing. How many of us would say we are too busy to pray, but when we get stuck in traffic for 20 minutes, we distract ourselves with podcasts, or we get angry about being late? What if that's a perfect, slow moment to spend in prayer? How about the grocery line? What if instead of checking our phone or judging the person for having more than 10 items, obviously, what if we just took some deep breaths? We said a breath prayer. We took an opportunity for a moment of calm in a chaotic world. That's bigger things too, right? We all know how fast life flies by. As I think about these goalposts in my life, how often I wish I could go back to my younger self and just say, enjoy it. Don't fast forward. 5th grade, you don't have to pay taxes or make your own meals. Enjoy it. In high school, you're still physically able to eat 6,000 calories and not gain weight. Enjoy it. That will not last. Life is short. It goes fast. We know that. So maybe part of learning to be patient is just learning to enjoy this season of life. And there are many great moments for all of us in the future, but God has us here in this job, doing community with these people. Patience is learning to be present instead of restlessly waiting for the next thing. Now, the final observation about patience is maybe the hardest place. People, humans, annoying, slow, inconsiderate, obnoxious humans. If we go back to Galatians, where Paul lists the fruit of the Spirit, the Greek word for patience is translated to long suffering, which is related to and connected to God's ability to be long suffering with us. The first time God announces his name in Exodus, he says, the Lord, or Yahweh, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, long suffering, and abounding in love and faithfulness. In the ancient world, people thought of the divine as spiteful and vengeful, but the Israelites' story, and hence our story, is about the true God who says, no, actually I'm slow to anger. I'm patient with you. This is where we get the final observation about patience from God himself. Impatience is filled with judgment. Patience is filled with grace. Judgment versus grace. Now, I don't know if you know this about church ministry, but we have secrets, okay? As pastors and ministers, we've got tricks and tools of the trade that you don't know about. One of the secrets, I'm guessing actually some of you do know this one. Maybe you've heard it at some point. But this is a phrase used in every church ministry across the states, any denomination. It's the phrase EGR. Have you heard that before? EGR. I'm giving you all the secrets. EGR stands for this. Extra grace required, okay? It's a shorthand and it's a code for a minister, for a church worker, to talk about someone who is loved by God, and maybe they're a good person, but they're just a lot to handle, a lot to deal with. And you might be sitting there and asking, am I an EGR? Is this what you say behind my back? If you have to ask. Beyond ministry, don't you have these folks in your life? A family member who spouts off crazy political ideas at Thanksgiving. A kid who, despite warnings and coaching, still blatantly defies you. A coworker who takes your ideas and eats tuna at their desk. A friend who only talks about themselves, never lets anyone else get a word in. EGR people are everywhere you look. And on some days, if you don't drink your coffee and you had a bad night sleeping, you can feel like EGR people are surrounding you, trying to take you down. But the good news, right, is we're talking about them, not us, not me. Like, I'm fine. I can't imagine anyone ever needing to have extra grace for me. I never snap at my kids. I never wake up grumpy with my wife. I never ignore people's emails or eat tuna at my desk. It's everyone else, not me, right? You are smart people. You know where I'm going here. If there's one consistent thing throughout human history and throughout the entire message of Jesus, it's this: all have sinned and are EGRs. All people require extra grace. Jesus is the image of the invisible God. So if we ever want to know what God is like, we just look at Jesus, and what do we see? Extra grace given to tax collectors, to prostitutes, to drunkards, over-religious Romans, Jews, crazy demon-possessed people, unclean people. Over and over, we see the heart of God, slow to anger, gracious, abounding in love. So when we talk about patience being a fruit of the Spirit, we're saying this is something God can birth and grow in us to the point where we can consistently start being like Him. Not just in traffic and with technology, but the hardest place of all, our relationships. Instead of judging, instead of getting annoyed, God can transform us into the kind of people who show grace, and then more grace, and more grace. All of the extra grace required from every kind of person. So after Abraham and Sarah took matters into their own hands, God didn't kill off the dream or give up on them. He gave them grace. And He told them to wait on His timing. Many, many years later, we see this. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And now Sarah said, God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. Well, yeah, because that's funny. It's absurd. Many of you know Irma in our congregation. I don't see Irma here this morning, but Irma turned 99 years old last month. And I talked to her last week, and I said, next year when you turn 100, our entire community, we're going to throw a birthday party, and we're going to sing happy birthday to you. But I wonder how Irma would feel if she was having a baby right now at her age. God gives grace to them. He rewards their patience, and He keeps their promise. And it's through Abraham's descendants, these kids, that He will give grace to all people, because it was through this birth of a son, through this lineage, that would be the culmination of the promise to be a blessing to the world for all the EGR, sin-filled, impatient people in the world. Jesus gives the ultimate grace by giving Himself for us. This is the heart of God, and it's the heart He wants to birth in us. Tomorrow, our family is going camping, and we're going to Big Sur. And if you've ever been there before, Big Sur is sort of known for this view of the ocean and the waterfalls. But we've really fallen in love with the Big Sur River that runs through the campground. And it's crystal clear water, and when you step on the stones, they are all these river stones that I have this morning. And they're so soft, and they're smooth, and they're slick. And I was thinking about these stones, like, how have they been shaped and formed? Well, the water over time is shaped. It's got sediment that hits it and sort of breaks it apart and then shapes it. But the key to this, the key to them being shaped and formed is what? It's time. It's time. Years and years of being slowly shaped and formed. And this is why patience might just be the first fruit of the Spirit that's needed to grow other fruits. Because we have to remember, these are fruits of the what? Spirit. These are fruits of the Spirit. These are not traits we can just read about and force ourselves to have with sheer willpower. These are birthed, grown, and formed by the Spirit. So like a rock sitting in a stream, what is required for us is to sit in the stream of the Spirit, to connect with a higher power, allow it to shape and form us. But the key is time. It's time. It's such a paradox. To become more patient, we need to become more patient. As we said, nothing about following Jesus, growing spiritually, connecting with God is quick or instant or immediate. The fruit of the Spirit come from spending our mornings with Jesus in silence day after day after day. Spending commutes in prayer day after day. Keeping our phones in another room. Taking a Sabbath away from the rush week after week after week. All these disciplines, these practices, they're just to place us in connection with the Spirit who over time will smooth us and form us and shape us. Jesus can form us into the kind of people who are in no hurry. As we're surrounded by rush and anxiety, we can be people who are filled with calm. Just imagine how amazing it would feel. Instead of needing to be in control all the time, you felt the freedom to release, let go. Imagine the bliss of not rushing to the next thing, but being immensely present, soaking in the present moment. Imagine while surrounded by difficult EGR people, instead of getting irritated and annoyed, you were filled with grace. You're slow to anger. This is what it means to be apprentice of Jesus, a vision of slowly over time being formed into his likeness. So in an impatient world of rush, may we ruthlessly eliminate hurry and be formed into people of patience. And right now we're going to practice this. Some of you right now, maybe you're feeling in your gut, your body, you're like, I'm ready to get to the next thing. But we're going to practice this. My friend Lisa here in a moment is going to be singing a song about, it's an old hymn about trusting in Jesus. And so what I ask you to do is just spend a couple of moments, couple of minutes, bow your head, close your eyes, spend some moments with Jesus, and just pick one thing in your life that you're waiting for. One area in your life where you're just incredibly impatient. And then just spend a moment with Jesus and release that control. Ask him to help you to release that. I'm going to pray for us, and then we'll spend a couple of moments doing that. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for being long-suffering with us. People who are impatient over and over again, and we try to take one step forward, two steps back. Thank you for being a God who is slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Right now, as we spend some moments with you, I pray that you would help us identify, like, what are these areas? What's an area where I'm just desperate for control, or I want to figure it out? And God, could you start working in our hearts? Speak to us. Give us the courage to release it to you and build in us, restore in us a trust, a faith that you can take care of us. So God, we give you these moments. Would you speak and work in us?